figured I'd give an update here on my lathe that did the restoration on the video. Never really expected that video to take off like it did with the views, and had a lot of people comment on it. And today's actually 1 year since I bought this lathe and brought it back to my shop here. Figured I'd just kind of go over the setup and kind of how it's been doing as far as the paint job and everything. Yeah, so we'll get into it. The paint's held up great. You can see there's plenty of chips on here. I've had a recent project I was just working on, so it's a mess. Haven't had a chance to clean it up. But yeah, the paint's been hanging on there just fine. You know, I hand painted everything. I didn't spray it on, but I followed the instructions. And even though brushing it off, it doesn't seem to be cracking or flaking off or anything like that. There's no rust showing through. I'm really happy with how the paint's been holding up. It's got a couple dings and scratches and things of just from use, from me just kind of not being careful enough. Like right there, there's a really small one from hitting the chuck, but otherwise extremely happy with it. The pan and the legs actually were sandblasted and painted at a paint shop, just because it was easier to do that, just because they're bigger parts, and didn't feel like going through all the work to clean them off and prep them and hand paint them myself. But I've got this little piece of cardboard down here, kind of catch the chips, make it easier to clean up, and keeps the underside nice and clean and from getting scratched up. Hopefully make it last a little longer. You can see down here just kind of my setup. I've got a piece of cedar down here across the legs where I've got a 3-jaw chuck, a 6-jaw, 4-jaw. Then there's the multi-stop rest that came with the lathe, and actually a homemade follow rest. Since I couldn't really find a Logan brand rest that was not crazy expensive, I just made this myself, and seems to work pretty well. I need to make a steady rest at some point, which I've started. I just haven't got that far. And you can see I have all these different dogs for various diameters hanging there, and then just my drop bucket for different pieces of scrap metal to do whatever I need to do. I raised the whole thing up about 4 or 5 inches with these custom stands. It's just a I-beam with some wide flanged angle iron with these adjustable feet that actually you adjust them up far enough and you can roll the thing around, and then you get into place and you just get it set up and you level it out with a good Starrett or machinist level. And those have held up really well, and the machine is pretty solid. Even if you get really bad chatter, it doesn't try to dance around on the floor. It's not anchored to the floor, it just sits on those rubber feet now. That's basically that's it. It's a it's a 1920 lathe. It's got the 4-step V-belt drive, which if you saw the restoration video, you saw a lot of this. Which I will apologize, I did not make that video the greatest of quality. Used a lot of free royalty or royalty-free music on that. I didn't really care too much to make it something respectable, I guess. So yeah, those of you who bear through the music and saw the content and could appreciate the work, appreciate your comments. That's why I'm kind of doing this update video for you guys. If you're curious. Yeah, I guess if you have any other questions about this, feel free to ask. It's been a great little machine. The recent project I just did actually was some engine work on a little 50cc 2-stroke. I took the head off of the cylinder and actually made a mandrel. I got it right here actually. Made this little mandrel. This is a 14 millimeter on the end, and it's actually a 20 TPI thread that I cut with the lathe, which obviously doesn't really go with a 14 millimeter diameter, but 20 TPI was close enough that I could thread the head of the cylinder onto this with the spark plug hole, and then it located on this shoulder, which trued it up to the lathe within about 2 thousandths run out. And then I milled off about 25 thousandths on the head, gave it a little more compression. And then I also actually took a pilot jet that I ordered to rejet the carburetor, and it was not exactly the right pilot jet, but the hole in the pilot jet was the right size. So you can see I've got a 1/8 inch collet here. I put that oversized pilot jet in this collet, and I turned down the threads and everything and gave it, I think it was an M4 thread, and turned down the whole thing to make it where it fit the carburetor, so I didn't have to go out and buy another pilot jet. And worked out great. Put it in the carburetor. Bike runs really good. When I bought the bike, I had low compression, like in the 90s, and now it's up like 160 psi on the compression. So that was a pretty successful project. Yeah, that's about it. I can keep on going on here. This is not something I do regularly. I'm not a YouTuber by any means, so this might be a pretty clunky video compared to what you guys see. But anyway, just figured I'd throw this update out there. Any questions, just leave them in the comments.